Welcome everybody.
Recording in progress.
To the Cbda, our structure that we're engaging with today. Welcome to them in particular, any National Treasury officials here and civil society actors, if you're here. Over there to you in Kulileko, are there any apologies? In Kulileko?
Hi, Chair. Sorry, I was just talking to Ms. Mahlangu on the phone. You were saying,
Right.
Chair?
Sorry about that, yes. So what are the apologies, if any?
I did not receive any apology, Chair. I've got a couple of members already in the platform. But
yes,
I see
I understand. Sorry, Mr.
has his hand up already.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, okay, Mr. Joy.
Honorable Chair, yes, some of the other members are still in the ministerial briefing. These double bookings are not working out that good. So they might be joining us shortly.
Yeah, that's beyond my control. I'm tired of raising it. Every time I get a mandate from you, and even when I don't, I raise it. And I said, I won't be raising it again. The same thing happened last week. But the understanding is that we are exempt. So in Kulileko, can you just send out a WhatsApp notice to everybody to say, we are exempt from the House from 4 p.m. onwards, unless a member is still taking part actively in the debate. But I mean, our commitment here is greater than the discussion there, simply for this reason. That began at 10 o'clock. As I understand it in Kulileko, am I not right? That was supposed to finish about half an hour ago, am I right?
Yes, Chair. 3:30 it was supposed to finish. That's what I wrote as well on the.
Yeah, we can't do anything more. Can you write a note? I'm tired. Maybe you got more power than me. Can you write to the secretary, to Mr. Jomo Nyambi and Mr. Sesa Mohai, and just say, once again, our committee members were not able to meet at the appointed time. But we can't hold back because we've got this 3-hour slot and we've got other commitments as well. They overlap from 6 p.m. So, you know, we'll have to go ahead, I'm afraid. Mr. Jitoy, there's nothing I can do. What I suggest you do is, can you raise it with your whip in the programming committee? I don't know what more to do. I mean, I've raised it about 6-7 times now. Most recently at the last meeting of chairs of the NCOP in June, before we broke for the constituency period. So, Mr. Jitoy, please write a letter yourself complaining to Mr. Jomo Nyambi and Mr. Mohai. Just say you raised it again. And you can CC it to me and I'll say, yes, we endorse what you're saying. Maybe the Freedom Front's got more power than the ANC in this case. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about that, colleagues. Shall we go ahead, please? Just introduce yourselves kindly, those of you here from the, I see Cindy's here, I see Dennis is here. Dennis, why don't you, instead of fighting with me all the time about joint meetings with the NA, you know, instead of engaging with the legal services unit, why don't you get your whip, what was it, that Mrs. Namaskachni, isn't it, to make a fuss about this? It's half an hour beyond it. Sorry?
Eunice, yeah, thank you. Done. I can promise you that Kathy hates these sessions because yeah, there's no framework for them in the rules. They go on all day, and then because of bad chairing, they end up, you know, overrunning. So I bleat to her regularly. She bleats in the WIPS meetings. She's got less power than you, Eunice.
Oh no, nobody listens to me.
None of us have power.
They just tolerate me. Remember, they can't say much to me. I'm 65 years old, so I can say what I want. And they say, yeah, Baba. No, yeah, Baba. Yeah, leadership. Yeah, leader, my leader, and nothing happens. If I am a leader, as they claim, well, I'm a leader without any power. I'm a powerless leader. That's worse than being an ordinary follower. Right. So anyway, who else?
A leader, but not older than me.
Hey, Dikaledi, welcome, my friend. Where's Moletsane, man? You know, EFF like protesting and all. Why don't they do something that really matters, right? Bring Parliament to a halt with a major, like, you know what they call it, troll campaign or something. You know what they call it? I don't know where they target you. Well, I don't say they do it alone. Everybody seems to do it. Maybe my own party too. I'm sure the DA are more sophisticated than us. some respects, maybe you do it too. I don't know. Let's not have a debate. All I'm saying is, I'm not computer literate or ICT savvy enough to troll or whatever the word is, anybody, nor do I have the time and energy. Right, having said that, well, let's honor my brother. If you are here, and you're really my brother in this context, yeah, here you are. Do something, EFF. Show your power. I've failed dismally. Never mind, I've been here 1,000 years in this parliament. Nobody pays any attention. Tikuleti will experience the same in a few years' time. They'll say, yeah, my leader, and nothing will happen. Okay, let's go. Cbda, welcome. Let me just remind Tikuleti, because she was the only one around there, sadly. Not that we don't welcome new members, but anyway. So we brought Cbda, you remember Tikuleti and others who might have followed, where before our committee a bit in 2017-18, they took part vigorously in some of our work, especially around the financial sector campaign. You will recall in our report, colleagues, we actually said, look, I urge members, I think we did this at the beginning of the new term, we urge members to look at that report. Of course, the DA will hate it, the Freedom Front even more so. The EFF will also hate it by saying it's a sellout, liberal, white monopoly, capital-oriented thing and doesn't go far enough. Never mind. That is, for what it's worth, the financial sector transformation report of Parliament. It's adopted by Parliament, at least National Assembly, sorry. But it binds Parliament because we consulted with the NCOP committee. Your chairperson at the time, the chairperson that whose seat I currently, well, not whose seat, but whom I succeeded, as it were, he had a look at it and commented as far as I can recall. Certainly we sent it out. Now that report became, let me remind colleagues at Cbda, I don't think we fell asleep after that. No, we did a lot of work. I spoke at various meetings of banks and also addressed the preparatory meetings, at least one major one, and I think a minor one, of the NEDLAC process. NEDLAC was about to convene the next financial sector summit. And for colleagues who don't know, then we had a sort of like, what's that thing, pass the parcel, that's a game middle class people have at children's parties, where that sort of thing, where the ministers kept changing. If I'm correct, we had 3 ministers, am I right? Between 2017, when we passed that report. And
that was quite a term, yeah? Too many ministers.
We're going to write a book about it. Tikuleti, Ministers of Finance, and that's a book Tikuleti is going to write with me. So anyway, each time a minister came, we accosted him. It was always him, and said, hey, please, man, this report, our term's ending soon. And, it looks bad. By the way, colleagues, whatever political disposition you have, it was the largest public hearing on anything to do with finances since 1994. And it astonishingly, I'm told later by commentators and journalists who deal with finance issues, about 3 of them said this to me, that actually to get the big four banks before a hearing with their CEOs know-how, all 4 CEOs came, was unprecedented, okay? It was because they were really worried about where things are going and they wanted to obviously have their point of view expressed. So, and also I think they took the committee a bit more seriously than perhaps they do other committees, or I don't know, it falls within their area, but trade and industry was involved with us as well in some other parts. So that report remains a report of the National Assembly and in effect Parliament as a whole. And again, we're going to raise it with the new minister. And he was head of ETC, as you know, of the ANC colleagues. He's looked at that report. The ANC's met on that report many times, as Tikuleti might know. And we need to give him some space and time, and then in a few weeks or so, we'll get Joe Maswangani to raise it because it's a National Assembly report. Right, before I move on, let me report back on a commitment I made. I know you people think, yeah, these chairs, they just say things and then they disappear. Well, I spoke to the chair of committees and I spoke again to the chief of. Both agree that the report, at least the input given by Treasury last week on the impact, fiscal and budgetary and economic, of the social unrest of July 2021 is very important to all committees. So there were various options put, a joint meeting of chairpersons of NA and NCOP, which is fine, but it leaves out the rest of us who are not chairs. a meeting, a House debate, I strongly opposed because that's a mandate I had. You can have that, but that's like political posturing. Let's have a question answer session where any member from any committee can stand up and say, but Minister or DG. So what is now being proposed, it's not being proposed, it's being considered, is actually the question answer format we've had in the House, where all committees come to the House. I would still prefer a separate sort of thing, declaring where all committees come, but it's not like a House sitting. It's you know, like more informal, but via virtual. But that's where we are. So colleagues, let's hear from Cbda. Can they tell us what's happened since that financial sector report was adopted? We called for greater support by National Treasury of the Cbda. We called for the Cbda to jack up its act also, and that both parties should do more to encourage the cooperative sector. And that's part of the government's policies on cooperative businesses and so on. So can we please have the Cbda report back and tell us also, frankly, where things are? We can do so much and no more, colleagues, because it's an NA process, it's their report, but I will remind them again that they did raise it with the minister in 2019 and twice, I think, and the DG and others, and it's a yes, yes, and then nothing came to be. But then COVID hit us and so on. So I think that also put things back. All right, over then to the team from Cbda, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe just by way of introduction, my name is Luyanda Ntuani. I was appointed as Chairperson of the board for Cbda in March of this year, of 2021, with my term due to end in November of 2021. With us today is our colleagues, the Deputy Chairperson of the Cbda, Mr. Paul Rousseau, our acting MD, Mr. David de Jong, who's actually on secondment from the Prudential Authority. His team, Ms. Nomadelo Sauli, the Director of Capacity Building, Ms. Lona Pariachi, the Deputy Director and Financial Officer, Ms. Catherine Whitley, the Business Support Manager, and Mr. Kobus van Nieker, our Board Secretary. So, Chair, I think today our approach is twofold. We've taken note of the documents that have been shared with the committee, and we'll be going through a presentation that we've prepared in line with sort of the brief that we received. And to that end, I think maybe if we go into the first couple of slides.
Chairperson, can I just ask a question? Have you been told that your input should be about 45 minutes or so? Can you manage in that time? Maximum an hour. Absolutely. We prefer, you see what my friend we prefer is, you see the attention span at 45 minutes is better, especially late in the day, right? Then what happens is if you leave out sections that you would have otherwise presented to us at the outset, you could do it later, you can slide it in, because we've got 3 hours if we need to use that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think we'll actually take that approach. But in essence, you know, what you see on the screen, we will not be reading word for word. We want to just rehash on the Cbda mandate and then go into the essence of today's discussions, which would be the balance of the contents of this presentation. And of course, to deal with the questions and answers, both from yourselves and from the document that was circulated. So with that said, if we go into the first couple of slides, Mr. de Jong. Chair, I think there are two views in terms of the functions of the Cbda. Those views are not in conflict. The one view is what's stated in the document that was submitted to the committee, which basically contains 3 high-level objectives or functions of the Cbda. What we've done in this particular presentation is to further enunciate on those functions. So there is no, just from a reading perspective, one may think that those are different functions that are stated, but we don't believe that those are in conflict at all. With that said, we want to support and promote and develop cooperative banking and promote the establishment of representative bodies and support organizations. We want to register representative bodies, accredit support organizations, and regulate the bodies and support organizations. We want to interact with any regulatory authority to ensure appropriate regulation of cooperative banking and cooperative banks. And in that same breath, try and ensure that we manage we monitor the trends and patterns in the development of cooperative banking. There's quite a lot that has been done, particularly with regards to this function over the past year and a half. But you know, once again, the team will go into the nuances of that. From providing a financial support to cooperative banks perspective, I think that's always been the core or the essence of this mandate, and to assist those entities with liquidity management and other support functions. We want to facilitate, promote, and fund education and training and awareness programs in connections with cooperative banking as a whole. And we also need to build partnerships, amongst them consulting with SAPA, and ensure that we've got the appropriate qualifications that can support cooperative banking in the country and beyond. I think just as an opener, Chair, that's basically where we find ourselves right now from a mandate perspective. There's quite a lot, of course, that has changed over the past while. Some of it we'll deal with in the question and answer session, based on the documents that were forwarded from an overview of the document that was submitted from, I think it was Treasury or Parliament, yeah. Over to my colleague, the acting MD of the entity, to take us forward. Thanks, Chair.
Chairperson.
Sorry, we can't hear you very well. You seem to be crackling.
I seem to be
crackling. Oh no, you're fine now. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was as David de Jong. I'm the acting MD of the Cooperative Banks Development Agency. For about the past year and a half, I've been seconded from did not have a permanent MD. So I'm going to take us through some of the slides going forward. We talk about the vision, which is to facilitate financial inclusion and economic transformation, ensure a sustainable cooperative banking sector, and our mission is to create an enabling environment for the cooperative banking sector.
Excuse me, it's not just me. You see, I'm moving around. I've moved from one place to another, 3 different rooms. I thought the signal on my side is terrible because I'm very near the university here, KwaZulu-Natal University, the Msunduzi campus. So often I get interruptions, but it's not that. I think it's on your side, because I see Dennis Wright has got something in the chat group. Yeah, Dikeledi also says, yeah, so it's on your side, my friend. Can you move elsewhere if that's possible? I don't know. I tried to move to 3 different locations in my house here, and it's not working, for me at least, and others.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I am on.
Maybe you switch off. Can I suggest something? Switch off your. Let's see, maybe that will help. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Video. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, that goes better.
Yeah, this seems for now to be better. Yes, give it a bash. Yeah, give it a go. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I was covering our mission as an organization, and has been said is what we do is we try and provide support to cooperative banking institutions to benefit the underserved communities in South Africa. So, as an organization, we of course have our 5-year plan, and our 5-year plan, which we adopted 2 years ago, was ready to see if we could increase our membership by 100%. Our baseline was 27,000. We're currently sitting on 31,000. Because to increase deposits of members by 50%, we were on 294 million, and we're now at 419 million. And then also to increase the number of registered CBDIs by the Prudential Authority, our baseline was at 9. Our 5-year target was 30. And we currently have 29 registered as per the Prudential Authority's website. We also had as a new outcome to try and digitize and ensure that all CFIs are digitized. This past year, we have made progress, but not in terms of the outputs, in that we've spent the last year developing a strategy to try and enable this. So where are we at the moment as a sector? Currently, the 9 registered, we're calling them cooperative banking institutions, which is made up of cooperative financial institutions and cooperative banks. 31,000 members. They've got a loan book of about 260 million, 419 million in deposits. And this is ordinary people's money, which is mobilized into these 29 banking institutions. Jointly, they own just under R500 million in assets, and they've got a capital at the moment of 33 million. So this is what the sector currently looks like. And we have seen some steady growth over the past year, 2 years, 3 years, in fact, some steady growth. The figure where we're struggling with growth is really around membership. So we notice that our existing members are encouraged and they're saving more and more, but the membership in itself is not in fact growing in the CFIs. This is over the last 2 years, some of the growth that we've seen. Membership has been 4%, loans 4%, deposits 21%, and assets 18%. Capital was minus 1%, but we had one particular CFI that did really badly, and it pulled down the rest of the sector as a sector as a whole. The question that we asked to address in this particular session was, how has COVID-19 and unrest impacted on financial cooperatives? We split this up into 2 to have a discussion around that. The Cbda was really able to operate really in that, but quite easily, just as the parliamentary committee has done, switch over to operating. They've been able to meet and they've been able to organize. The Cbda is an agency as well, has been able to work from home, where previously was
Chair, I beg your pardon, may I interrupt?
Sure.
David, Dennis. Yeah. Look, what I'm suggesting. Yeah, I think you're going to raise the issue about the lack of sound quality. Is that right?
Chair, yes, indeed. If I can just point out to the presenter that he's got a directional microphone, and every time he his weight from one foot to the other, or if he looks to the side, the microphone's losing him. So if he can try and keep a bit more still, it's going to help us tremendously with the sound. It's very difficult to follow.
Yeah, you know what I thought, Dennis? Because we have the slides and some of us had a chance to look at it, we can at least read it. What I don't want now is like an endless delay, because for once it's really a bad presentation. It's not the gentleman's fault, obviously, but to the extent he can assist by doing what you suggest, maybe you should try that. And in Nkululeko, have you got any ideas, or anybody who's ICT savvy? What does he do?
There is an IT person amongst us, Chairperson.
Can he assist as well?
Yes, I will try him, Chair.
Okay, all right. Can you try again, my friend? Hello?
Hi, I'm really sorry about that, but I will do that.
Yeah, Mr. Dio?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, no, it's not any better. I don't know. Can't somebody else take over?
In fact, I've even brought the...
No, you know what, my friend? Look, we can't waste more time. It's not your fault. Look, you're coming in and going out. You're fading and then you're booming a bit, right? Look, we really can't have this. We're running out of time. Chairperson, can you take over and either do it yourself or allocate it to somebody in your team, please? Until Mr. Dion gets sorted out. Thank you.
Sure. Perhaps I can ask Nomadelo, who's assisted in developing this slideshow. Nomadelo, can you perhaps try?
Nomadelo, please.
Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, sorry, just 1 second, my friend. Let's have Fanny Dutoy. What is it?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. In one of the other meetings, the same fault was experienced, and what assisted was one of the other members sharing from their PC and the presenter just sharing the audio from his side. Then his bandwidth isn't taken up.
Oh, yeah. You know, I thought this is being done by Nkululeko, showing the slides on the screen. Nkululeko, are you managing that, or is Mr. Diong managing it?
It was Mr. Diong. I will share it.
Yeah,
Can you stop sharing
it from him? Yeah. In the meanwhile, can you go try, one of you, please, to go ahead, because we're losing time.
So I will take from where Mr. Diong.
Please, yes, please.
Off.
Thank you, my dear. Thanks, my friend.
Yes. So one of the other, and now the presentation is gone.
Yes, I'm trying to share it on my side.
I'll wait for you. Or maybe Mr. Diong will be able then to carry on from his side.
That was slide 9.
Yeah, so
Yes,
you got it on the screen. Okay, between the two of you, please decide who's going to take on from here.
David, go ahead.
All right, so
No, Mr. Diong, it ain't
It's still
working.
bad.
Yeah, can you please
Okay.
go ahead then instead? Yeah. Okay, thank you,
Yeah,
Mr. Diong.
no,
You've
but-
tried. There's nothing more you
ahead.
can do. Thank
Yeah,
you. It's not your fault. Bye. Can we please go ahead? Namadela?
So some of the challenges that were faced by the Cbda team in terms of working from home were the network challenges that they were facing, but more importantly on the side of the CBIs as well. And then the procurement was sort of affected in terms of us procuring services if we were going to outsource some of our training programs to service providers. The process took longer because we rely on National Treasury, and sometimes people will not be in the office because everybody was working from home. So we are in the process of commissioning a service provider so that they can do an impact analysis on the effectiveness of our online support, because we're trying this for the first time now in 2020, 2021. So that's where we are in terms of Cpda. And then in terms of the CBIs, the initial concern around their reporting to the Prudential Authority. They were struggling in terms of communication with both the Cbda and other regulatory bodies like your FISCA in terms of meeting the deadlines for submissions, as well as because their operations are all manual. So they were sort of providing inefficient services to their members. And because the members cannot access their CFI services outside the areas where they live in, and should there be the level 4 regulations or whatever regulations that were put in place such that they are unable to travel, they couldn't go to the CBIs to actually transact, either withdraw or deposit their funds. And most of the CBIs were closed down. We are now seeing an increased delinquency rate on the loans due to retrenchments and unemployment. And in some instances, the death of the members that has risen due to COVID. So those are the areas that the CBIs are now struggling. But I think in more than other, it's the networking challenges and the fact that the CBIs lack digital transformation in terms of servicing their members. So we haven't had any reports due to the recent unrest or protests that occurred recently. Thank you, Nkululeko. So these are the
please, my peace of mind, my energy, my.
Sorry?
Sorry, somebody needs to mute. Nkululeko, please help.
Okay, so the strategic.
Can everybody please mute? Somebody is not muted. Please. Okay, there we are. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So as requested, we were requested to report on the agency's performance in the year 2021, going back also to 2019. So those are the figures on the screen. So I don't want to go through them. So one of the indicators is the outreach and education activities on the CBI model to institutions or groups that want to form CBIs. So that target was met. These are audited performance information. For 2019, it was 15, and so on and so forth. And in the year that has just gone past, 2021, we exceeded that performance by 14. And then the number of communications in 2021, again, there was an overachievement by 1. Number of partner and stakeholder relations. For 2021, there was no overachievement. It was the same. I'm trying to go down, Nkuleko. Hello, Nkuleko? Thank you. So as you can see there, we were aiming to get clean audits. We had an unqualified audit for 2019 and 2020. And then 2021, we had a clean audit. That was what was planned, and we had a qualified opinion in 2021. And this was because of the capacity constraints within the agency in terms of lack of segregation of duties to review financials, including the skills deficiency, since the agency is not well capacitated. And I think that was brought up in the meeting of 2017 that you referred to earlier, Chair. The percentage of valid invoices, we didn't meet that, but we are working very hard in making sure that it doesn't happen again this financial year. We have put systems in place, as you will see when my colleague in finance reports on that. Thank you, Nkuleko. So these are some of the achievements or highlights for corporate services. In the report that you mentioned of 2017, there was the cooperative banking strategy as one of the recommendations. So we did that with the World Bank, with the assistance of National Treasury, and Mr. de Jong will report into that later. So these are the sessions that we have with the Prudential Authority and other stakeholders as our strategy talks to partnering with other partners or agencies of government so as to achieve our objectives. All right. Kolego? So we have NASASA as one of the registered CFIs, newly registered CFIs, and we are hoping that with their huge numbers in terms of their stokvel members, we will see quite an increase in membership. As Mr. de Jong earlier mentioned, that this is where we were lacking in terms of growth in this sector. So we are hoping that with NASASA being registered, we'll be able to see a huge growth in this aspect. There was also the Department of Transport in the Eastern Cape that also tried to register their own CFI, and they are also coming in huge numbers. So we are hoping that there will be growth that will be seen in this regard. In terms of capacity building, we had 5 indicators for the 2020-2021 financial year. That was the number of training programs that we had conducted. We are basing this on the number of programs that we have that are accredited by the bank Cbda. That ranges from governance, financial management, and so on. So we trained the cooperative banking sector managers and board of directors, as well as staff, in terms of how to run their institutions to financial stability. So we had 5 of those programs planned for the year 2020-2021, and we managed to achieve all that. We had revised this from the previous years of 2019 and 2020, because previously we were counting the number of board of directors that we had trained. But that changes as new board of directors come into play, as they are elected annually in their AGMs. Number of direct technical assistance. This is one of the interventions that or services that we provide to CBIs because they always have problems with their financial management, how to keep records and how to capture their transactions, those that are working with spreadsheets and so on and so forth, and reporting quarterly to the Prudential Authority. So we assist them in terms of that. And here there was an achievement in the year 2020, 2021 by 2. Our planned target was 64 for that financial year. So there was a huge achievement in the 2020 financial year. So this is the third, no, can you go down again? It's a duplicated slide, this one. Kuleko. Thank you. So we also monitor our CBIs on a monthly basis to ensure that they do their transactions accordingly. They capture their withdrawals and deposits as required so that they are able to produce their quarterly reports to the Prudential Authority in terms of accurate numbers that they are reporting on. So our monitoring interventions were we had an overachievement of 7 from a planned target of 16 in the 2020-21 financial year. This we didn't have in the previous years of 2019 and 2020, but we identified a gap that if we don't do monitoring, we will not be able to catch some of the inaccuracies earlier and be able to provide corrective action. And then in terms of organized group, Cbda is always approached by organized groups that want to form CBIs. And we've got a team that provides pre-registration support where a group is taken through from not being registered, but meeting the minimum requirements of 200 members and 100,000 in share capital. And we take that group into that pre-registration support where we take them through the Cooperative Banks Act and what are the roles and responsibilities of the board of directors when they actually get registered so they know what they are getting themselves in. So here the planned target was that all the groups that approach Cbda will be able to assist them. And that is what we managed to achieve in the 2020-21 financial year. So this is the indicator that we have not managed to achieve. So in the past, we had a central support services unit, which was then closed down in 2020. And the staff from the CSS was then merged into capacity building unit. And we had then this new indicator in 2021, where we said we would like to have all a percentage of registered CBIs digitized, meaning that they've got a system that they are using, and us as Cbda will go out there and check what systems are available in the market. What are CBIs using? Are they using manual systems? Are they on Excel? What banking systems do they have? So we are continuing with that matrix. Once we then have that matrix in place, it is an ongoing exercise. We then present it to the CBI board of directors so that they can then select a system that speaks closer to their service offerings. And then we identify the gaps in the system that they are currently using so that they can procure a proper system. But what we are offering is only advisory services, as we don't have a system that they can plug in. So we did not meet this target because we didn't have the processes or the resources in place to actually ensure that it was achieved. So these are the services that I was talking about for capacity building. So mostly our services were on-site interventions. So there was a lot of traveling, as you have heard on the previous slides. So there was a lot of traveling from head office because Cbda has got only one office that is based at National Treasury in Pretoria. So we go out to the CBIs in all the provinces where they are based. So most of our interventions were on site. We will do the pre-registration support that I've just spoken to. And then once this institution is registered, we then take them through operationalization. We developed a tool called the Co-op Bank in a Box tool, which takes them through the business operations, banking operations, and so on and so forth. And then as they are operating, they have difficulty in some technical areas, like your liquidity, for instance, solvency, delinquency. So we've got a team that specializes now in highly technical interventions, and they would work with that CBI until those areas are met as per set standards of the prudential authority, the prudential requirements. So we moved from on-site or physical face-to-face services or interactions with our CBIs to on-site, to virtual platforms. So all our training programs are now offered online. CBIs attend our programs virtually, and the Cbda actually pays back their data that they would have used for them to be able to connect for those sessions. So that's how we have managed to achieve. And we found that because there's less logistics in traveling to the provinces, we have managed to reach quite a number of CBIs than we had been in the past. But in terms of the impact, we are not so sure that we are as effective as we would have been if we were where the CBIs are at in the provinces. So we are still learning and improving on our virtual offerings. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I've got some problems with charging. My iPad's fading battery-wise, and the charge is not working. So if I get lost, will Njado please chair? Go ahead. Who's next, Chairperson? From the Cbda side?
That's our presentation. Thank you.
Oh, that's it. Right. Then over to members, please. Who's going first? Are there no comments or questions?
I've got Mr. Ryder's hand, Chair, here.
Please go ahead, Mr. Ryder.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's an entity I knew nothing about until we got the invite to this meeting a few days ago. So I'm learning, certainly. And I just want to understand a little bit more about the mandate that you have and how you bring it to bed. So maybe the first thing I can ask, so the CBI and a CFI, what's the difference between those and a mutual bank? Is a mutual bank considered to be a CBI? And yeah, that'll help me a little bit to give me context exactly of what we're discussing. You spoke about you've managed to grow to 31,520 members. So what I'm taking from that is that you have 31,000 people that are, you know, customers of a cooperative financial institution. Is that right? It's a fairly small number, and probably because, frankly, I mean, as I say, I've never heard of you. I've been in banking for 20 years before I became a politician. Since then, I've also got a qualification in banking, NQF7, I think it is. So, and never heard of this. So perhaps the advertising is something that needs to get taken into account, and perhaps we can hear a little bit about what your plans are for your own expansion and so on. But I just don't really understand the role, you know, in terms of your mandate. To me, this is a case of, you know, getting out and promoting the Mzansi account that the various banks have put in place, pushing the post office bank to expand their footprint, expand their reach, expand the knowledge of their existence, because I think most people think that the post office bank died 10 years ago, and you know, try and make the post office viable again. You know, is that not part of your role, or is your role totally aimed at looking at these cooperative financial institutions? You know, and is that a stokvel? Is this a way of formalizing stokvels? Perhaps if you could spell it out for me a little bit, it would be great. And then certainly, I mean, you spoke about an Indaba and a virtual Indaba that you held, and you invited stakeholders. Well, yeah, I mean, I consider myself to be a stakeholder, and I perhaps request that going forward, if you have such an interaction, by all means invite us. Let us learn a little bit more about this, because obviously, you know, the commercial banks can only do so much, and also don't have the reach into some of the more rural areas, and are not as accessible to many people. So yeah, I need to know a lot more, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maletsane.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me acknowledge the presentation. Also apologize for not switching on my video. I've got a network challenge where I am. In the presentation, I've heard the presenter talking about the NASASA. I just wanted clarity there, whether NASASA has joined as a national representative, representing all the provinces, or it's a portion of a certain province that have joined as their members there. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Is anybody else who wants to come in? No?
That's all for now, Chair.
All right. Can you respond to these two questions before I come in? Thank you.
Thanks, Chairperson. Can I try? If my sound is bad again, then just chuck
It's
me
better
off.
now, my friend. Better now, yeah.
Thanks. I rebooted, I restarted, so hopefully it'll be much
All
better.
right, that's helped. Yeah, obviously, yeah.
So I'm going to try and then just put some of this into a little bit of context for people who are not sure what a CFI is, what a cooperative bank is, and a mutual bank, and perhaps some of the differences. So essentially, a cooperative financial institution is a group of people who come together, they mobilize their savings together, and they give one another loans. Where they differ from stokvels is they begin to formalize. So they actually register as a formal cooperative, and they then required to meet the requirements of the Cooperatives Act, as well as, because they're deposit taking, they're then required to register with the Prudential Authority. Now, a CFI is kind of your entry level, your basic savings and loans entity. It can operate up to 50 million, and that's the threshold up to which it can operate. And by then it must meet the requirements to in fact register as a cooperative bank. So the requirements to register as a cooperative bank is there's certain financial, human, and operational capacity requirements that you need to meet. And then on that basis, you can then register as a cooperative bank, apply. And if it's accepted, you'd register as a cooperative bank. So your cooperative banks are essentially bigger. So your CFIs are really your startups, if I can call it that, and it gives people entry into the sector. Your issue about, you know, why not the Mzansi account? The thing about a cooperative is owned and controlled by the members. Therefore, we're able to ensure that part of the mandate in South Africa is to ensure financial inclusion, and people can own and control their own banks as opposed to having to service the commercial banks. The prudential requirements are far lesser for a CFI than they are for a cooperative bank. But a cooperative bank can operate up to any level and can take as much deposits as it wants to. It does have certain limitations on the products and services that it can offer. It's not as sophisticated as a bank. So for example, it can't do foreign exchange, and there's a number of activities that it wouldn't be able to do. I mean, also their prudentials, the way the organizations are set up is that they are very conservative in their nature. They don't speculate with members' money. They're not allowed to, for example, take members' money and invest it on the stock exchange. It needs to go into secure funding, and a lot of the money, in fact, goes into government bonds that they're organizing. The difference between a cooperative and a mutual is that a cooperative operates under what's called a common bond. It either is a group of people who work together, people who belong to a certain association, or live together in a certain geographic area. So for example, Nahawu has their own CFI, and that's associational. On the other hand, we have a lot of rural CFIs, which are based on the geographic area in which they work. And then we do have one or two work-based ones or employer-based. That, for example, I don't know if you know Weber's, the clothing manufacturer. They in fact have their own CFI, and their CFI actually has reached the stage of being a cooperative bank. So all the employees at Weber's created their own institution, and they registered as a cooperative bank now. Where it differs from a mutual, of course, is that a mutual you need a minimum of 10 million capital requirement just to start up. So that's already quite a lot more different. And a mutual also doesn't have the common bond. It can service the general public. But it is still meant to be a mutual owned and controlled by the members themselves. So that's just a quick overview of what it is. As a banker, I'm disappointed that you haven't heard of the concept, but you're right. I mean, 31,000 members is neither here nor there. However, it does play a role in financial inclusion in that these CFIs, cooperative banks, are run by ordinary people. Now, because they're run by ordinary people, this is the role that the Cbda plays. It capacitates those directors to be able to understand their roles and responsibilities. It assists the managers and the staffing of the various CFIs to understand their roles and responsibilities. Internationally, they're known as credit unions, and they're huge. I mean, when you talk about a credit union in the US, in Canada, in Australia, or in Africa, if you talk about a savings and credit cooperative, in Kenya, there are more people that belong to a SACCO than in fact belong to a bank. So in Swaziland, it's very big as well. In Malawi, it's very, very big. In South Africa, we've had a lot more challenges, and I can understand the challenges. We have a very sophisticated banking sector and financial sector on the one hand, people are being serviced to some extent, but it's mostly transactional is what we've learned, is that money goes in and it goes out. People don't really get additional value add. So we're hoping that the CFI and the cooperative banking model can present an alternative then. So that's on the question of the co-op bank, the CFI and the mutual bank. And I hope I've spoken a bit about its missing. The second one was around NASASA. So NASASA as an association brought some of its members together, their stokvels, because they're made up of various stokvels around the country. And they have in fact now registered their own CFI. So those members came together, they've established a constitution, they've registered with the Prudential Authority and in the process of establishing themselves. They're hoping to go live and quite big quite soon. And as Normadelo has said, we're quite excited about this particular initiative because we think that it will create some type of buzz and we could see a lot more people involved and interested in CFIs. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The host has disabled my video. I'm not sure why, but it's cool. I don't really care. I don't look any different from what I was looking an hour ago when we started. So anyway, look, basically, I really liked the question you asked, Dennis. You see, I thought we invited the Cbda when we began this term and we had all the entities before us. So somehow we slipped up, I think, in preparing the program. And ultimately, it's the chair that must account for it, but nobody else raised the Cbda. Now, in the last term of Parliament, we saw the Cbda playing a very important role. Of course, we couldn't have foreseen the COVID-19 onslaught and the constant change of ministers. But, and you have dealt with this issue in part. What I want is a more explicit set of answers. So the first question I've got is, since that financial sector transformation report, what has happened? To what extent has National Treasury assisted you? To what extent have you been helping to shape the Cooperative Development Bank strategy? And so on. Now, given where we are, For example, one would want to ask you, are there specific things you think Treasury can do within the constraints it confronts, and they are daunting, as you know, compared to the time we had this public hearings and the report deriving from that? So the question is, what do you think is a reasonable set of practical support measures that Treasury can provide? Then on the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, I mean, have you done enough? I hear what you say, but I don't get the feeling that you are being decisive enough and you reducing the prospects of that happening again. You know, in your case in particular, because there's so much of skepticism of cooperative banks, even within the majority party, I think, you know, you're going to be well above board, and you're going to be very prudent and, you know, impeccable in the way you manage your budget. So all that happens maybe in certain quarters is reinforce their concerns about being cautious about cooperative banks. Now, obviously, you can't separate cooperative banks from the broader cooperative sector, which the government, trade and industry in particular is attending to, as indeed is the majority party. It may well be that sometimes a party doesn't know about you because it's not something that party necessarily feels is an important agency, because maybe, I don't know what the DA's position is on cooperative banks. So maybe they don't have such a strong policy on it or something, I don't know. Maybe the DA members can explain. But I regret that we did not invite you when we invited all the entities to introduce the finance family, as it were, to the new members in the NCOP. Now, those are questions for now. If you can come in on those. And you see, in Nkululeko, I was going to check, did you actually invite a Treasury official who deals with the cooperative banks, and is he or she here? In which case, we'd like to put the questions also to them, and they can also respond. So in Nkululeko, is anybody here? Cindy, is anybody here from Treasury dealing with this entity?
Chair, I only saw Cindy from National Party. Yeah, she's here. Cindy.
Okay. In future, Cindy and Nkululeko, can you just ensure that when we have an entity before us, which has always been the norm, maybe it escaped you in Nkululeko and Cindy, they should be the official here because they need to give their side, you know, of the story. So, for example, on the cooperative development strategy, bank strategy, we need to know how that is being implemented, how far that's got, and so on, from the side of Treasury, not just Cbda. So in future, in Nkululeko, as our committee secretary, please ensure that you have the relevant department official here. Now, while I've spoken, there may be other hands up. So who else is coming in?
Mr. Ryder.
Ryder, Dennis. Okay, Dennis.
Thanks very much, Chair. So thanks for the reply to my initial questions. And unfortunately, it's left me with more questions than answers, to be honest. So perhaps you can tell me, what are the benefits of registering? Effectively, yeah, I don't want to say a glorified stokvel, but you're getting my understanding. A cooperative arrangement between a bunch of people can be a fairly loose arrangement. What are the benefits to registering your cooperative financial institution? And again, how are you promoting yourselves and promoting the fact that people can take benefit from signing up and so on? I'm struggling to get the relevance. I'm actually sitting with the appropriation in front of me, and I want to see how much is actually put towards this by Treasury every year, which may even give me more questions. But yeah, I'm trying to scratch to find out what the real benefit is of this entity. Thank you, Chair.
Willie? Mr. Akam.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Your first name is Willie, yeah. Okay.
No, I'm here. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. I have been covered partially with regards to the irregular expenditure. I'm going to touch on that as well. The one thing that I wanted to just find out is that in the research document that we've got, it was stated that compared to other African countries such as Kenya, Togo, Rwanda. Kenya is standing at 13.3%, Togo at 26.7%, and Rwanda at 13.8% respectively, whereas South Africa's penetration rate is 0.06%. Why is there such a big difference in the penetration rate that we've got in South Africa compared to the other African countries? And I think that touches up on what Dennis Ryder said with regards to marketing. I think there is a huge backlog with regards to that. I'm not a banking fundi. I do not have a lot of knowledge, such as the knowledge that Dennis Ryder and other people has got with regards to banking. But if you look at something like that, it gives you a clear indication that something with regards to the marketing of this is not correct. And then the other thing that was also said in that research document is the increase in irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditures. I'm not going to go into all the figures, but you guys know what it is. Why has it happened? Why is there such a huge increase in that over the last few years? Thank you very much.
Thanks. Is there anybody else in Kululeko? I don't see any other hand up. Okay.
No hand,
And on page 6 of Poppy Ntaka, our very good researcher, her report, you see a lot of other questions. And Kululeko, did you send although they have covered some of the issues, but did you send the report itself to the Cbda to respond to in their original input?
Yes, Chair, I did through National Treasury.
Yeah, but they haven't, as I see it, responded explicitly to some of Poppy's questions. Look, the researcher spends a lot of hours doing that report. The views expressed there are the researchers. She seeks to be objective and technical, but these are questions that derive, as she sees it, from your report, and they have to be taken seriously. And in good work, we finally got the ball rolling, where by the Thursday before, Poppy has the report ready. We send it to them and we expressly ask them to respond to the issues there to facilitate an expeditious processing of the discussion today. So I think, members, if you look at that, you may want to pick up questions there, because I don't think they've answered them explicitly. Okay, over then to you and your team, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. And what I'll do is I'll just give to speak to some of the questions that you raised up front, and allow my colleagues as well to chime in. I think without going into the detail of the irregular expenditure, one key focus from a board perspective was to start implementing consequence management across the organization. We've done quite a lot in that regard. We've had a number of investigations to try and unpack the reasons and the context of each and every sort of audit finding. This has been a big focus over the past 2 years, at least since I joined the board. We've made a lot of headway in that regard. We've also not only just investigated for consequence management, but we've also strengthened the controls within the environment. And I think there is, over the past year, an improvement really in our posture from an audit perspective. So with that said, I mean, the colleagues will then speak to more detail around that. The first question, Chair, that you sort of referred to was support from Treasury, and how has that been coming? I think right now, I want to answer that question in 2 parts. The first part is the Treasury part. The other part is what's actually in the research paper that was shared with us only yesterday, Chair. So I must apologize to the committee for not having submitted a written response that is sort of point for point in line with what's articulated on page 6 of that research unit paper. We only received this research unit paper yesterday. We will, of course, if need be, submit a written response in this regard. So the Cbda is in a state of flux. It is quite unfortunate that the current board was not part of the discussions around incorporation of the movement of the Cbda from National Treasury into the Small Enterprise Development Agency. Nonetheless, I mean, we remain committed to ensuring that the mandate is still carried forward, and we will welcome any efforts that require us to assist in sort of facilitating and enabling an environment that will allow for better incorporation and to make sure that, certain balls are not dropped along the way. From a treasury perspective, it is commonplace that for the past year and a bit, we've actually had a lot of call it austerity type of measures in place. So from a funding perspective, that's one conversation that really speaks to the sector itself. But from a support services perspective, I think National Treasury has assisted in a lot of governance type and operational management type functions, be it IT services, legal services, and the likes. Yes, from time to time, we do experience some frustrations, be it from a process perspective or prioritization perspective. But nonetheless, I think the engagements with National Treasury were starting to improve, and we hope to carry those engagements over to the Small Business Development Department when this merger happens. And then the next question, Chair, is around what has happened since the last engagement with the committee. I think I'm not going to speak to the specifics in terms of the dates, but two very big items from a board perspective that we were quite excited and happy about. The one was the advancement of the development of a national cooperative banking strategy with the help of the World Bank, and of course leveraging a partner that was sourced by the World Bank, global practitioner or expert in cooperative banking. That strategy and how it was proposed was actually also presented to this cooperative bank in Daba. I think the acting MD may have touched on it, but that was a very big initiative. It is a pity that, of course, we executed it during this COVID period, but nonetheless, even with the online tools that we used, I think it was a fairly successful and engaging Indaba with wide participation from industry. So with that said, Chair, I think let me hand over to the acting MD to sort of maybe express more detail on the other nuances of the questions. David?
Thanks, Chairperson. Member Ryder, the issue of what would be the benefit of registering, as you're aware, in South Africa, if you want to be a deposit taker, you need to be registered as a bank, anyone who takes deposits in the country. So what this does, if you are registered as a financial cooperative or as a cooperative bank, you then register with the Prudential Authority and you're legally then able to take deposits. You were saying it's a glorified stokvel. Well, if you take Nahawu, for example, they have almost 10,000 members. So while the assets might not be that large, or it's not even that, not that large, it's about 30 million. It's more than a stokvel. Stokvels are generally much smaller groups. They rotate funds amongst each other, and they're not operating as formal businesses. So this takes that process of formalization one step forward. So that's the benefit for registering. We do have to be very careful. As I said, I'm seconded from the Prudential Authority. One of my own concerns being in the development agency is that we could, in fact, end up over-regulating, because as you know, as a Prudential Authority and as a regulator, there are other concerns about the safety of members' funds. There was a story very recently about one of the CFIs that failed about 4 years ago, and they're taking the board members to court, or they've laid charges against the members. And again, that's a tough situation that we have to then deal with. On the issue of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, we just finished our latest audit, 2021. And I can report to this particular committee that there was no additional fruitless and wasteful expenditure in this entire year that's just passed now. So there definitely were the improved controls. We have got this under control. And the issue at the moment is around the other cases. Again, as the chairperson was saying, we had resignations. We've handed a case over to the police. And we are continuing with with the consequence management, which was a major emphasis when I was brought into the organization. That was like the main thing I was asked to deal with. There was something like, I think, 16 internal audit findings that I needed to deal with. And I think that we have got it largely under control. Of course, we have to never stop looking. The issue of the strategy, I think the chairperson covered very well. We've done the strategy in a very, very engaging way. It was developed. We then tabled it to the Indaba. The Indaba then created subcommittees, and we've just finished with essentially, it's a very simple document, but a very simple strategy for growth for the sector. And we need the sector to take it forward. The Cbda will play a support role for the sector, in fact, to drive it forward. On the, sorry, I'm a little bit lost now in terms of the question. Sorry, I hope I've dealt with all of the questions. Sorry, yeah, thank you.
Okay, if there's anything outstanding, members will pick up on that, right? Further questions, colleagues? So shall we quickly go through page 6? Is there anything there that members want to raise? So the first questions there were, okay, the managing director, then it was Cbda plans to resolve capacity constraints that's been dealt with, then irregular we've covered, then the growth of the cooperative banking sector. Would you say the growth rate is sufficient? That's been covered in some other respects. How has COVID impacted? You covered that. Then you spoke about then she raises a cabinet meeting of the 4th about the merger. Now, on that matter, can I ask a question I meant to ask earlier? Is there a deadline set for when this merger occurs? Do you know, Cbda Chair?
Sorry, Chair, yes. Unfortunately, we, as the Cbda board, have very little information. Even the contribution to the cabinet presentation was not done with the current board. So this is a matter that comes from about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I believe. So we haven't had an opportunity to engage with the decision and the ramifications of that decision.
Okay. In Kulileko, just remember that, you know, Parliament's ICT people get heated up if you're speaking without the video. And for the last half an hour, I'm still, when I press start video, it says, you cannot start your video because the host has disabled it. Now, I know I'm not particularly good looking, but hell, man, you know, that's not the issue here. I mean, look how Dennis looks, or Willie Outcome for that matter, compared to me. So, you know, I see it's happening. Okay. At least this brings some glamour to the committee meeting. I'm sorry, Tikuledi, that I have to say that, Poppy and Esther, but facts are facts, right? Or facts is facts. Right. So what I want to ask is, you know, to the committee, you know, I wish Treasury was here in Kulileko. Firstly, I've got a note from Kulileko to say that the reason the report got to you, Chairperson, so late is because our very good committee researcher, also a very good content advisor. In the case of the researcher who draws up these reports, very competent ones, what I like about her reports are they're not too long and they're quite pointed. And, you know, I think it's good rather than writing long reports. So, you know, she had understood that by today, we would have the bill before us. And it's still stuck in the NA process because they've changed their program, partly to take into account, as I said last week, the social unrest and the need for oversight in that regard and reports to be processed thereof. And also because they've changed their program for whatever other reason. So today we weren't supposed to have Cbda. So we apologize to the Cbda, and we understand therefore why you couldn't give a more pointed reply. So, you know, look, I want to express a point of view, which is fairly consistent with the majority feel in this committee. You know, I know, Cindy, you're not in a position to reply, but if you do want to venture a reply, it's fine by me. It's surely not acceptable, colleagues, the Treasury would do that without consulting the party that has the expertise and experience of day-to-day running of a Cooperative Banks Development Agency. I've never heard of that. Actually, I can't recall a similar, not even a discussion with an entity to tell them, look, these are the reasons why we think we should move to small business development. I know this has been on the agenda, but I didn't know it was being taken so far. But I suppose it's because we don't know about the August cabinet meeting. Maybe it was in the media, but I didn't pick it up. So in short, I do think it's unacceptable, Cbda. I don't understand why this was done. It's not on. Even if they listened to you and then said, okay, we don't agree with you, at least they heard you. So yes, this committee, the majority will not agree, consistent with approaches we've taken. If anything, the Finance Sector Transformation Report suggests the opposite, that this is an important area. Look, all of this is not to say colleagues who were not around, as Dikeledi might remember, that we romanticize the Cbda. They were committing lots of mistakes that had nothing to do with their limited allocation of budget and resources. In fact, I think our argument was, if they're more productive in using what limited resources they have, their case to get more money and other resources allocated to them by National Treasury will be considerably enhanced. So we didn't romanticize them. But on the other hand, we don't think National Treasury takes you seriously enough. And this statement of yours, which is quite astonishing, just reinforces that. So I think that unless there's somebody objecting, we're all cheesed off about this. And presumably at some stage, we'll raise it with the minister when he appears before our committee or the DG. Is there anything else, colleagues?
Mr. Nduwane has his hand up, Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Nduwane, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think just to not belabor the point, but to reiterate that as the board, there are clear benefits to this merger, to the cabinet decision. There's a very strong business case given what the Cbda needs to do or should be doing in society, and the resource constraints that we've been faced with in past years. So we do support the decision. It's just not really understanding the nuances behind the discussions of that decision. So we are happy and ready and willing from both management and board perspective to start those engagements in earnest and facilitate a more fluid sort of transition to the new mothership. Thanks, Chair.
No, I understand. The issue isn't whether you agree with it or not. The issue is consulting with you. That's what it is about. And if you agree with it, great. But still, they need to be consulted. All right. So basically, if I understand this merger, Treasury will have what? Nothing to do with you. In other words, it'll be solely SBDC, Small Business Development Department, or will Treasury have some sort of like oversight? Do you know?
I've got Mr. de Jong's hand up here.
Mr. de Jong, over to you.
Yeah, sorry, my hand is not up to answer that particular question, except to say that as the chairperson has said, we have no sense of anything at the moment. We've not been consulted. As the MD, I've not been consulted about this process. And I think as the chairperson, we've not been. So we actually can't answer anything at the moment, which comes to the merger. But all we know, and all our staff know, is there's an announcement that will be merging with the Cbda in 7 months' time. So I don't have to tell you as an MD what that does for staff morale, especially because we haven't seen a business case. We haven't seen anything to that effect. I think the chairperson was correct. There are some real benefits. And it also talks a little bit to what the Speaker Ryder had said, is that we have a 20 million budget, by the way, Speaker Ryder. The issue is that half of it we use to do all of our governance stuff as a Schedule 3A entity. So it really uses up half of our budget. And as the chairperson was saying, there are clearly, if we could use the full 20 million towards development of the sector and half of that for promotion, we'd go far further than we are at the moment. So there are benefits. There were one or two other things I remembered from your question, if you'd allow me just to respond. One was around what could the committee do to help, and why is it so much bigger in other countries and not as big in South Africa? So there are probably three key reasons that I could give you is that in all other countries around the world, the financial cooperative movement has access to payroll deduction from source. So you'll find that your biggest CFIs, credit unions around the world are all public sector based, and they're able to access the payroll deduction system. In South Africa, we've been denied access to that particular system, which means that every one of our members still has to belong to a bank to be able to do a deduction, to be able to do their savings. And it's almost counterintuitive. Why would you want to have a bank account to have a deduction, or you've got to come and pay in cash every single month to your CFI? So we've been trying to set up, or the sector's been trying to set itself up. And even you take Nahawu, the same thing. Money goes into the bank accounts. Money then gets taken out of the bank account for savings purposes. Whereas if we had access to the payroll system, like every other country in the world has always had, it would make a huge difference. We've never succeeded in being able to argue with our own treasury that, if we were serious about economic empowerment, that would be the first way of doing it. I think the second issue to take notice around is taxation. In South Africa, we have a situation where cooperatives, if they generate a surplus, so the members essentially are being overcharged, then have to pay tax on that surplus. So again, if you look internationally, most cooperatives and financial cooperatives don't pay tax on surpluses. They might have to pay tax on any reserves that they set aside, but not on the general surpluses that they make. So again, the whole business model is completely confused here. And then the last point, I think as well, that we would want to make is the issue of deposit insurance. Now, the deposit insurance is going to be coming across your tables quite soon as well. And what you will notice is that the deposit insurance is going to exclude cooperative financial institutions. So you have a situation where the smallest, most vulnerable institutions, where you have the poorest, I don't want to say the poorest of the poor, but you have poor people saving inside these institutions because they don't have access to banks, are the very ones who are not going to have deposit insurance, notwithstanding the fact that they're regulated by the Prudential Authority. So cooperative banks are going to be fall under the deposit insurance, but CFIs at this stage, it's expected that they exclude it. So again, another incentive to grow the sector is taken away from the sector, unfortunately, as it seems that the CODI is not in a position to deal with it at this particular time. And then lastly, one of the biggest things that have held back the sector was what Normadelo had spoken about, is the lack of digitalization or computerized systems. Because again, if you can imagine, I belong to a bank and it's doing things manually, but the CFIs have struggled to afford the technology that's required to promote the service. So if there are any areas that you think you can help and you really want to help, I think that's where we would request your support as much as possible. Thanks very much, Chairperson.
Yeah, before we go on, let me just ask. It's a question to Mr. Ntwane, really. But you're a new board chair, and I think it's unfair to expect you to give a comprehensive answer to this. But anyway, you might know, Chairperson, it's one of the more established office bearers. Officials might know. Did you actually ask to be consulted on this merger, firstly? If not, why not? Secondly, when you explain why the cooperative banking sector is weaker here than elsewhere on the continent, and maybe the developing world more generally, I think the Bangladeshis have done very well, haven't they? With cooperative banks, and I think the one leader there got a Nobel Prize, was nominated for one, who's won some other prizes globally. But generally, I think in South America also, it may be true that on the whole, that whole part of the world, or at least some countries within it, actually do much better than we do in cooperative banking. You've explained the reasons, but another reason, which I think you hinted at earlier, was also, isn't it, that we have a very established banking sector in this country, which is why M-Pesa and those, what have now become e-wallets and all that, in the initial phases of entry here, didn't work. I think Vodacom tried something equivalent to M-Pesa, which is banking through a cell phone and you don't need to pay any admin fees. All of that didn't work some years ago, but now it has begun to work. So isn't it also the power of the established banks? Secondly, we held a view at that time when we were processing the bills and for the new Twin Peaks model, and also for the issues related, the report that we finally crafted on financial sector transformation. We held the view then, as I remember, that one of the disasters about VBS collapsing is that it was a setback not just for the poor pensioners and others who were banking there, but for the mutual bank sector as a whole. Because the idea of mutual bank also is that you acquire experience and grow, and then hopefully you become a small bank, a fully fledged bank. I think that was the design for VBS at a later stage. Now, with the cooperative banking sector, are there examples elsewhere in the world? I know cooperative banks function very differently from established banks, and they have a very important role, at least that's my view and the view, I think, of the majority party. But do you find situations where elsewhere in the world, cooperative banks then become fully fledged banks, like established banks? Like, is there the equivalent, let's say, of FNB or Nedbank in other countries, where the bank actually emerged originally as a cooperative bank? Then as far as what can the committee do to help? Well, the question that arises now is something that maybe Frank can help us with if he's here. If we have sole oversight over you, obviously then you're answerable to us, and we can propose together with our committee colleagues in the NA, our fellow counterpart committee in the NA, various proposals to Treasury. But now, if you're going to SBDC, then we don't really have an oversight over you. And we can hardly call on National Treasury to do things when it's about to oversee the transfer of the merger to SB, Small Business Ministry and Department, right? And then when you say, Mr. Dionga, you say, Mr. Diong, you say it's 7 months. When you mean 7 months, you mean 7 months from the day the cabinet decision was taken in August, or do you mean 7 months from when?
Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe to start with the question on the merger. I've been on this board since November 2019. I can categorically state that we have never had an instance where we've engaged on a merger with a new department or a move of the Cbda. I can also put on record that we only found out of the merger, the cabinet decision, as a matter of course with the rest of the public. And
no, that's astonishing. That's astonishing, really. Outrageous, actually.
Yeah,
outrageous.
It is unfortunate. But like we say, I think we've taken the attitude that it is what it is. We are now well positioned, at least from a certainty perspective, that there's a new home for the Cbda. What we'd want to see happening in earnest, in order to, one, deal with stabilization issues within the organization. So staff are people. They need to know their futures as well. And, to also execute on the time between now and I believe March 2022. I think I'm answering the question you posed to Mr. Diong. So that's basically the timelines that are on the table right now. Notwithstanding, we as the board, as management as well, we remain ready to engage and assist in facilitating a smooth and beneficial transition to the new entity. And then to the second question, Chair, different countries have got different models. A lot of them have sort of at their foundation is the banking system itself. South Africa has got a totally different but highly robust banking system. What we've observed, and through the research, particularly from the World Bank as well, and some input that we got from the recent Indaba, that the US, as an example, has got a different model of cooperative banking, which manifests itself in the form of what's referred to as credit unions. Mr. De Jong will speak to some of these as well, but in some of the European countries, the cooperative banking sort of environment is also focused. It's got a very narrow mandate, whether it be for agriculture or otherwise, and more in now our African states as well, due to sort of let's say the absence of a lot of barriers or controls in the banking sector also has encouraged the growth of cooperative banking. But those are sort of nuanced statements that I'd make at a high level. There's lots more detail behind each and every country from a research perspective. I'm not sure if we'll have the time today to go into each and every one of those, Chairperson, but I think David, if you could then take over from there. I'm not sure if I've missed anything else, Chair, that you would have liked me to address directly. Just I think by last comment, look, the whole conversation around cooperatives is not a new one. It's not just located to the Cbda. I think in South Africa, we've had a multifaceted sort of approach to growing cooperative banking and cooperatives in general. But we haven't had a firm grasp of consolidating all of these efforts and making sure that we actually achieve those. So you'll find in a lot of DFIs, our traditional DFIs, especially at a regional level, those DFIs would also have strategies that speak to growing the cooperative market, as it were, obviously with focus on their particular province or region at the time. So there is a lot of activity around cooperatives as a whole, but there is clearly a missing link in terms of sort of knitting all of these efforts and actually optimizing the use of the resources by making sure that there's constant communication and coordination of efforts across the board. Thank you, Chair. David?
Sorry, before you go on, I just want to ask, on the staff issues now, presumably this is merger, well, not presumably, but has there been any discussion? You see, apart from the policy, apart from getting to hear you because you are the entity affected, the other reason why obviously Treasury had to consult with you is because staff are going to have and are having, no doubt, anxieties about what happens to them, when there are mergers. The two organizations that come together, staff on both sides get obviously anxious and worried about whether with the nationalization they will lose their jobs or they might be allocated to another post they don't particularly feel they're suited for or care to do. So do you know if you're going to retain the current staff or what's going to happen?
Yes, thanks, Chair. It is highly problematic. I think one of the questions that's in the research paper speaks to the appointment of an MD. For the longest while, we've basically operated under two models. Up until March this year, we've been having an acting chairperson of the board for one reason or another, which I'm not going to go into today. So I've assumed this role as of March this year, and the biggest focus was on recruiting a leader for the organization. We were literally at the tail ends of that recruitment process at a point where and it was an extenuous search. You know, the skills that you require are both financial, but they're also very call it social focused skills. So there's in as much as there's a lot of talent in South Africa, we went into depth in uncovering the best possible candidates for the new MD position. Unfortunately, this decision culminated with at a point where we were ready to make an offer for a permanent MD. So we will live and try and navigate the next couple of months again under some type of arrangement, be it a secondment from the Prudential Authority or otherwise. I really can't speak because the board has not deliberated on that as yet. And then, in as far as staff is concerned, yes, Chair, it is a problem. It is a real problem. What we have done, though, through call it agreement with our shareholder representation, is that the operational sort of HR processes that were already underway will continue. So we, as an example, had a number of staff members that were on contract, which were on the cusp of being converted permanent. We will be continuing with that process. And then from a continuous engagement perspective, I think, you know, it is an organization that is characterized by professionals, and it's not a huge number of people. So we're trying very hard through management, and I know management is really struggling with this, but to sort of allay fears and give a bit more confidence in that at a point, this process will be more clear, and we don't see at this point anything that will negatively affect them. But I mean, once again, I mean, there's no guarantees in any type of merger or restructuring process, Chair. Thanks. Dave?
Okay, next.
Thanks, Chairperson. So I think that that my chairperson kind of said that, you know, it is nuanced from country to country. You can think about some countries, such as in the Netherlands, where you got the Rabobank, where essentially what happened was you had lots of small cooperative financial institutions on the ground. They came to a process where they then came together and they created the Rabobank. And Rabobank is now a very, very centralized bank, which then has all of these cooperatives really as their branches. So that's kind of the one model that we see. The model in South Africa, and again, we tabled these models to our members when we had the discussion around the strategy. The situation in South Africa is that people still feel that ownership and control is very, very important. It didn't want to move towards a centralized model such as that in Rabobank. Rabobank is just one. So what is being proposed in South Africa is that you've got your primary cooperatives who will come together to create a secondary cooperative. And the secondary cooperative will kind of be a centralized cooperative then that will provide liquidity services and other services to a cooperative. There's strong movement towards creating a secondary cooperative bank at the moment, which our legislation does allow. And we're hoping then that there'll be much more coordination between the cooperatives. One of the principles of cooperatives is cooperatives helping each other and supporting each other. So that's kind of the model here. You were talking about models where cooperatives become full-on banks. For example, we could take Kenya, which has got a very, very successful savings and credit cooperative movement, but they also have a cooperative bank. And the cooperative bank was largely capitalized by the savings and credit cooperatives themselves, but they've actually gone one step further where I think it's 40% of the cooperatives bank is in fact listed on the stock exchange in Kenya. And there are a few other models as well where cooperative banks then end up listing on the stock exchange. So you know, each country begins to take on a dynamic of its own in terms of the way the cooperative movement develops. And again, a lot of that is informed by the culture of the movement, and some of the circumstances on the ground. As you're saying, South Africa has its own uniquenesses in that we have this very sophisticated banking sector, but people are completely excluded from it on another way. So it's kind of, you know, I don't think we have any of the answers, unfortunately, otherwise we'd be much further than we are at the moment. if we did have the answers, but we've been trying to find them through the strategy sessions that we've been having with the CFIs in terms of finding a common way forward for the, I'm using the word movement in terms of financial cooperatives. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, is anybody else wants to come in? I don't see any other hands up. So we should draw to a close then. There's no use carrying on till 7 if there's no need to. So firstly, I think in Kululeko, we will need to send a letter. Let's draft a letter to the DG about, you know, why was this done in the way it has been done, and draw attention to the fact that, you know, it shouldn't go like this, as he himself and the minister will no doubt agree. And they shouldn't do this in future. So Cindy, you can alert the minister and the department. We'll be writing to them in the next 48 hours or so. In Kululeko, will you breathe down my neck, as it were, to ensure it gets done? Firstly. Secondly, look, this won't be something we can follow up the issues that we've raised here beyond alerting National Treasury to our concern and the minister. So, and the minister can't be held directly responsible. He wasn't around until, I think, about 2 weeks ago. So he can't be held responsible for that policy decision or paper. Or, you know, well, I'm not sure who is the minister. Excuse me, the time it was done through cabinet, but if it was a current minister, then obviously he was following up on a decision already made. So there we are, we're done. Well, we wish you well under your new department and ministry and your new committee. Many of us, I know, especially in the majority party, believe that the cooperative sector is even more important now than before, given COVID and the increasing inequalities in our society. When we say this, we're not some romantic populists that, you know, the way forward is cooperative banks, you know, hurrah sort of thing. We know the power of the big banks, the highly monopolized sector here in this country, but also globally. And you know, we know how challenged we are as a country economically and fiscally. And, you know we have to tread carefully and cautiously about what we do in respect of cooperative banks. But at the same time, you know, precisely because of what's happened over the last 18 months, we need to give much more focused, decisive attention to this sector. And you yourselves have to make this work. Your own credibility is at issue as individuals and as a collective, and as those who espouse cooperative banking. But I think overall, it comes to me at least personally, your overall strategy seems reasonably sound. It's implementing it. It's ensuring you have the resources and capacity implemented. That once again is an issue before a public entity or department, or in fact, Parliament too. So there we are. Thank you all. Thank you for your time. And we meet tomorrow in the SECOA committee, appropriations. Thank you.
Thank you, committee. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.